Here's one that I wish we had submitted because it's very topical at the moment. So it is new election campaign. Please vote. All good if not. Not working as well as predicted.
Oh no, that's way too relevant.
Yeah.
That's one of those articles that you're like, oh no, this is actually a satire thing, but they've
Yeah, it
just
could be
gone too
mistaken.
close to the truth.
All right, so we'll move on from the Lamingtons,
Right, yeah.
the Lamington stuff. Welcome back, Ruddle Maniacs, to another episode of Ruddle Me This. I am Taylor Ruddle, and with me once again, frequent collaborator is Hamish Mabon-Ross, back to join me for another indulgent episode of the podcast. This week I thought I would do a sort of retrospective time capsule podcast on the whole pandemic. Because I don't know if this is a unique experience to me, but I have a bunch of memories of things that happened during the pandemic, and I feel like we're going to forget what it was like in, 20 years or something. So I thought it might be something future me will appreciate for me to do, kind of like a Dear Diary, or like I've got the memories in my head. So that's what I thought we'd do today. I thought we'd bring Hamish back, and we are just going to talk about what our experiences would like before, during, and after the pandemic. So with that, welcome back to the podcast, Hamish.
Hello, thank you for having me once again.
I'm sorry to interrupt your XCOM 2 time, but I figured this was something that the people needed to hear.
Yeah, it's very important study that I was doing,
Preparing for the next
and
tragedy that we're about to go through, right?
yeah. So I thought, yeah, no, why not relive some of those pandemic memories as well?
Yeah, I suspect your, just based on what little you told me about your experience of the pandemic, yours was a lot less fun than mine was. So we'll get into some of that now. So first of all, before we start, any listeners out there, if you haven't already, go and check out my 15-minute comedy special, All My COVID Jokes, on YouTube. That is free to watch, and it has all sorts of hilarity based on that family-friendly fun time we all had to endure the pandemic. So the first question, I've got a series of questions written down that I think will provide a good structure. So the first question I'll ask Hamish, and then I'll answer myself, is just before the pandemic started, what did your life look like? What were you doing and living and etc.?
Um, so I guess as we were finding out that the pandemic was beginning, like end of 2019, I just had a nice trip over to Melbourne, got some new tattoos, went to a big convention over there. Um, and I'd just started my new job working at the Dunedin Public Hospital. Uh, and then as we were starting to get into the beginnings of 2020, when it was like, oh, there's this new virus coming, it seems to be spreading. Oh, there's a case in New Zealand. Remember when it was big news that it was like, oh goodness, there are 8 people in the country that have COVID right now, and it was like kind of scary and kind of, I don't know, uncertain. Um, I was still cracking on with work at the hospital. A colleague and I were starting to get a bit concerned that maybe something was going to happen. Uh, we were trying to get our boss to like at least get things prepared,
Hmm.
so that we could, if need be, that we could drop everything and work from home. Um, and they just kept telling us, no, 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 you're just panicking. Oh, don't worry about it. You're just being overly anxious and stuff.
Yeah.
And
For some context, maybe to some international listeners, I think this is the first time that we've actually had a pandemic, like a global pandemic, make it to New Zealand, because I don't believe we ever had Ebola here. And
no,
then before that, I remember there was a swine flu and a bird flu that were
yes.
the kind of variations on the SARS virus, if I remember correctly.
Mm.
And I have a very vivid memory of being in high school. It was a very rainy day. And all the lights were off on the floor for some reason. It was a really dark thing. And I remember one of the teachers told us, yeah, they reckon that we've got swine flu in the country, and that was like a big. What do you mean it got here? Like, and
Yeah.
so I think New Zealanders were pretty cocky in the beginning about the pot. Like, I think a lot of people thought it was never going to make it here, but in their defense, we had had a pretty good track record of it not happening beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, I guess not to completely dismiss your point, but we did have, I think my grandmother remembers kind of the polio epidemic. There was
Yes.
a lot of stuff going on with that. You know, children weren't allowed to go to the swimming pools because they just didn't know how it was spreading and things.
Wow.
Um, there was the big rubella or German measles outbreak in I think the 50s, but there was also another. And then there was, of course, the Spanish flu at the end of like World War One when all the troops came back. So that was quite a bad pandemic. But yeah, certainly for us living memory, COVID has kind of been the one that actually stuck. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
SARS, bird flu, and swine flu never really eventuated that much. It was
exactly.
always just
Yeah.
something happening elsewhere.
Yeah. I'll give a little bit of my what I've been doing. Much like Hamish, I had just gotten back from a trip. I went to Japan, and I think it was November 2019. And I remember being slightly concerned that this, because when it began, I remember you just used to hear rumors about like it's this virus in China, and we're not sure like
Mm.
what else was kind of. I don't think we heard a lot about it, and I was probably in that in that group of Kiwis that was really cocky that it'll never make it here. Um, but I remember being slightly concerned that it was going to impact my trip there, but in the end, it was fine. I made it over there and back without any sort of incident. But then it was February 2020 when they declared that it was a global pandemic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I very vaguely remember that because we did a series of comedy shows at a venue called Duck Central, probably the week before the pandemic was announced or something like that. Um, and yeah, I just remember that was in February. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what month it was. But yeah, and what was my living situation? So I was working for a newspaper as a graphic designer in the office. I think I had not long been at that job, to be honest, maybe half a year or something. Still living with my parents. The thing, the thing that happened to me was I got back from Japan and sort of thought, oh yeah, I'll spend a year kind of freelancing and trying to find some work and thinking, I'll move out eventually and I might be at home for for a year or two. And not long after finding said job, uh, yeah, we had this global pandemic, which kept me there for probably a couple of years longer than I think I would have liked to stay. But yeah, that was kind of my situation there.
Mm.
When things were kind of ramping up, the next question I've written down is, were you scared of COVID?
Um, I think my colleague and I uh, were not scared necessarily, but we were certainly very aware of it, and we were trying to take every precaution that we could. Um, you know, working in a hospital, albeit as administrators,
You're
we
still
were
around it
still
though, aren't you?
acutely, yeah, you're acutely aware of the people that are coming and going from the hospital. The you know, they started talking to us about the potential like consequences if there were outbreaks in the hospital, all the plans that they were putting in place, like, oh, okay, we're going to split all the doctors up into little teams and they will only work within those teams. So if one team goes down, we're not losing all of our doctors.
My work did
But
something similar, split it into A and B team, and yeah, exactly.
yeah, yeah, well, but I think also the other thing we were sort of very aware of it and cautious because my colleague was pregnant, um, and so we didn't know, like, you know, there was no research really happening
Yeah,
yet.
nothing.
It was not like, is it going to like kill her child? Is it going to be like a disfiguring thing? Who knows? Is she more susceptible? So we were very aware of that and not wanting to like, you know, obviously you don't want to actively get yourself sick. It's never the thing you want to do.
No, no. I I remember being the thing that makes me laugh in hindsight is I remember I think we all did this. We read off the list of who was the most vulnerable, and it was like the elderly, but then also people that were out of shape. And I was like, oh Lord, I'm in one of those categories. So I definitely remember being like, I'm probably cooked if I get it, but I was because I was living with my parents, I was more worried about bringing it home and them getting sick and then them getting killed
Yeah.
by it. So that was definitely like that was definitely on my mind. And I
Mm,
think the thing that was hard to judge is it feels like everybody's had a slightly different experience of it. Like I know people that it was the worst pain they've ever been in for the whole kind of week that they were sick with it. And then you have other people that were like just a little bit under the weather for a week. So we
mm.
really like you said, there was so much that we didn't know about it. And I guess that's the scary thing for us is like not knowing what's coming, right?
Yeah, well, it was, I mean, it was just like not knowing how bad it was going to be. And then it was like, there was no real certain information. So it was like, is this bit true? Is this bit true? It was constantly being updated. You were hearing all sorts of rumors from all sorts of places, and you're like, is this true information, or is this coming from like an anti-vax group, for instance? Or, it was
Yeah,
all that stuff of, oh, well, it's like 99% survivable. And it's like, yeah, but 1% of a population of 8 billion is actually quite a lot of
quite a
people.
lot of people. Yeah,
Um, but yeah, it was just not knowing. And then, of course, like as we've seen in the last couple of years, it just mutated, it kept changing. So it was always
yeah.
like, oh shit, is it going to get worse? Is it going to get better? Who knows?
Oh,
But yeah,
I'd forgotten that feeling of seeing on the news that they've announced that COVID's mutated again because you go, everything's going to take a step back now. All the lockdown precautions. I mean, it was all good stuff, to get me wrong, but like for us that were like living through it, because I feel like from what I've heard from family and friends that live in Australia, and I've got a friend that was in London for most of the lockdown. New Zealand's lockdowns were quite strict compared to the rest of the world, which
yeah,
I feel like it was the right decision. Um, but like when you're, I still remember you'd see those broadcasts. You remember when the government would say like, "We've got an announcement at 5 o'clock tonight regarding," and you're
yep,
like, "Oh, yep, we're going back into the lockdown." Like that was
yep.
always, it was like never a good thing that you were going to
Yeah,
hear
that
about.
that sort of knee-jerk reaction of like, oh no. They're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
hey, there's an important announcement at 4 o'clock. You're like, ah, shit.
This ain't going to be, oh, we found the cure to COVID and you can all
Yeah,
resume your lives. Yeah. I think, like you said as well, as the experts and that didn't really have a time frame for when things were going to get better. And
yeah.
like I still have this very vivid thought in my head. It's a memory that's stuck around for some reason. I was walking around with my brother because you remember. I guess we can move into lockdowns now because that's my follow-up
Mhm.
question to the were you scared? Um, I was walking with my brother. We all got a sort of daily government mandated walk to to keep the the mental breakdowns away and whatever I think it was yeah, mainly for our sanity. They gave us a bit of a walk, and yeah, I still remember looking at a sunset and just thinking in my head like, I wonder how long it is going to be until we like have even the kind of announcement of a vaccine being worked on or something, because I have
Mm,
no idea how long these things take. And yeah, that was, I think, for a lot of us, that was the thing of just like, it was you. Maybe it was good for certain people because we literally had to live day to day. You couldn't really make long term plans anymore.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, just to go back, I do quite like the way you phrased that the government took us for a walk or something. It was just the way you said, as if they turned up, knocked on your door, and they had like a leash ready, and they're like, "Come on, off
Come
we
on,
go,
Taylor, it's time for
walkies."
walkies.
Look, a dude in a hazmat suit
I'm doing
turns up with a
circles in front of the
lead,
door. Yeah, I'm doing circles in front of the door, just
just
peeing on
pawing at the door, waiting for him to turn up.
peeing on all the
Um,
lampposts and stuff on the way through.
he's like, Taylor, you don't have to do this, right? It's just a walk. Um, I mean, I so like for me, the lockdown announcement when we first went into it, that
Uh,
was kind of that was kind of wild because I can't remember exactly what day they announced it, but we'd left work on the Friday before lockdown was a thing. And the following Monday was going to be Otago anniversary day. So we had a day off work.
Ah,
And then I think it was maybe the Saturday, they said, look, okay, here's the big announcement. Wednesday, we're going into lockdown. I think it was maybe the 25th of March, something like that. And I get a call from my boss on the Saturday or Sunday, and he's like, hey, could you come in on the Monday? No one else will be there, but we need someone to come in just because we're going to have to start getting everybody to work from home. No
and
one's
you've
going to be
been
coming
telling
in.
them, you've been
Yeah,
telling them
we'd
this
been
for
telling them,
months.
and it was like, great, okay, fine. And so it was just this mad scramble, but it was that particular first week was quite hard because my dad, my granddad, and I have birthdays within the same week. So my dad's
Right.
the 20th, my granddad's the 25th, and then I'm the 28th of March. Um, so we my dad and I had to rush to Christchurch on the 17th to visit my dad's father because he was terminally ill.
Oh, right.
And they were like, we don't think he'll last too long. Um, and as it happens, that was the last time that I saw him
Wow.
because he died on the 26th. So just a couple of days before my birthday when we were in lockdown.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that was a particularly difficult thing because I know there were a lot of the news reports or whatever were trying to kind of guilt the government and being like, oh, how much of a slap in the face is this to people who can't visit their dying loved
Yeah, I
ones and
remember seeing
stuff?
those. Yeah, yeah.
And I remember hearing that, in the stand-ups that the Prime Minister would do. And I remember just thinking, I think actually at one point, my mum and I had gone to the supermarket because I was living at home with my parents, and we'd been to the supermarket, and we heard that on the radio, and both of us just went, "Oh, fuck off," and turned the radio off because we
Right.
had actively had that situation, and we were like, "No, we understand it sucks,
Yeah.
but it's for a good reason." Um,
It's that sort of
but
getting
yeah,
offended on behalf of someone else thing again, isn't it?
yeah.
Like, I bet most people probably were like, you got to do what you got to do, right?
Yeah, and like it was definitely like that early that first lockdown when it was it 4 weeks that we were in lockdown and then they extended it to six, or was it six and they extended it for another two?
I actually don't remember
I think it might have been
much
four
about
weeks and they pushed it another month or something,
yeah, yeah. We
but
definitely
they
went longer than they longer than they anticipated, didn't we?
yeah, and I think they were just being overly cautious, but yeah, so I spent my 31st birthday in lockdown,
Oh wow.
which was fun. Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we just kind of got by. I do
Mm.
remember though distinctly thinking at one point, because I was working from home, I realized that I hadn't really left the house at all.
Oh
Like I
yeah.
wasn't really bothering going out for walks and stuff. I was like, nah, I'm good. I don't need that. Um, and I realized, yeah, I just hadn't left the house for 2 weeks. And I
Wow.
was like,
Yeah.
okay, when you next go to the supermarket, I'll just come along for a drive. Like again, I was really like a dog. I was like, I'll just come in the car. It's
Just
fine.
ride in the car. You're barking at other people, other eldest sons in the front seat.
But what about you? What was the lockdown like for you?
Yeah, so like one other question I was going to say as well, were you working, you were still working uh whilst you're in lockdown, right?
Yes, yeah. So when we were at level 4, I was working from home. And I think once we got back to level 3, I was technically allowed to go back to
Hmm.
work in the office
Yeah.
because it was like essential workers or whatever had a pass. So all hospital staff were considered essential workers. So I
Yeah,
just found that easier to go back to the office.
makes sense. Mine was my company actually did a really good job of making sure we were able to work from home in the weeks leading up to like, oh, this might be a thing. I suppose because we were in the news, they kind of had their finger on the pulse of like what's going to happen. And so we were able to work from home, but because a lot of businesses couldn't operate, they didn't need advertising. So there was, I would do like maybe 2 ads in a day, and I would just have to kind of keep my phone on me in case they needed me to do something. So it was pretty
Right.
yeah, it was interesting. I think something that a lot of creatives, because Hamish and I are both stand-ups, and the thing that a lot of creatives I think felt like they had to try and keep like doing something in the lockdown, I guess especially if it's literally your full-time job. I
Mm.
know people turn to things like Twitch and Zoom shows, and I never did anything like that. We did put together one, how do I explain it? It was like an improvised slideshow comedy thing. We did that on Zoom as a bit of a fundraiser for the place I started doing stand-up in Japan. And
Right.
but yeah, I didn't really do a lot of that. But I also didn't feel like, because I think for a lot of people, I have some friends that are in like construction or horticulture and stuff like that. People that basically couldn't do anything and just got
Mm.
this this great holiday where they got to like chill out for a bit and catch up on all their TV shows. And I looking back on it now, if I could send information to my past self, I would have told myself like just relax, just enjoy it, just look at it as a holiday.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, also I think I'm someone that doesn't do well with not knowing what's going to happen next. So I think I was had that sort of meeting anxiety where um, I think we spoke about this in the FOMO and phobia episode where um, if I know I've got a meeting at 3 o'clock, I find it hard to commit to anything big during the day because in my mind it's always like, even if it's hours away, my brain still thinks we might have to drop everything and rush off to this meeting or whatever. Um, I think I found it hard to commit to any projects because I was like, wow, the pandemic in theory could end tomorrow. Like, knowing now it didn't. It went on for years. But yeah, I was just in this weird, like I did some stuff in my day job, but it wasn't really fun. Didn't do a lot of stand up, and I think I was just unable to commit to. I couldn't commit to being productive or relaxing. I was in this weird in between, and just like cabin fever definitely set in with my family. We had a lot of blowouts towards the end of it, and it's I'm happy to say I'm living flatting now, so it's our relationship has improved a lot. But yeah, towards those ends of like it was like lockdown and the fact that I'm like way too old to be living at home, the fact that I was still kind of working, it was all just like, yeah, no, not good vibes, as the kids would say.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I found that especially for level 4 working from home, it really messed with my kind of work life balance
Yeah,
because I would find that I would basically roll out of bed, put some pants on, and I was straight to my desk in my room, and that's where I was working.
yes,
And so I could do that from like 8 o'clock, and then I would work probably through lunch. Like I would just maybe get something from the
mm,
kitchen and then sit down with food and just eat
yeah,
at my desk while doing work.
yeah,
And then quite often, instead of stopping at like 5 o'clock, I would keep going till about 7 and then be like, oh shit, I need to stop working now because
wow,
yeah, like and I
that's a
couldn't
long day.
couldn't kind of separate it. But once when I decided to go back to the office and work from there, it was a lot easier because I had my exercise to and from work because I was
Hmm.
biking,
Hmm.
and then I could start and stop. It was a lot
Mm,
more kind of segregated, being like, this is work time and now I'm done.
yeah, I think
Um,
that's something that's a lot of studies have been done in the wake of this about having a dedicated space for work, a dedicated space for sleep. I
mm,
understand as well that contributes to a lot of us having sort of like quote unquote insomnia is bed is kind of a generalized eating, chilling, scrolling on our phone, watching TV from the bed and sleeping zone. And that's why people struggle to go to bed because their brain associates that with a whole bunch of different things and not
yeah,
just sleeping. Um,
yeah, true.
But
Mm.
so we've got about 7 minutes left in this pod. Let's get through some more topics. So vaccinations. I presume you're vaccinated. You would have had to be
Yes.
because you are in the medical industry, right?
Yeah, so we were, I think, the second group after was it 65 plus or
Yeah,
70 plus, that
yeah.
once the sort of quote unquote elderly group um got theirs, we were in the next group. So we got ours done fairly quickly.
Hmm.
Um and I think, yeah, I mean, and since that point I've had, boosters and stuff like that, which I've
Yeah.
been grateful for because I've had a few close calls
Mm.
with the old COVID. But
Do you respond?
yeah.
Do you respond fairly well to the vaccines? Like I know a lot of people get messed up by it. I've had like only one of the doses really got me, but everything else has been
Mm.
all good. How about you?
Yeah, I think the one of them I got the most minor of headaches the day of, I
Yeah.
think. Um, One of the others, I think I felt a bit sleepy. That was about it. Uh, Interestingly, the latest one that I got, I think has possibly fixed a problem that I had with my heart,
Oh wow.
which is
Okay.
which is strange.
What,
I
what
used to
was the
have, well, I've for a while I've had these weird kind of palpitations, like my heart will just kind of beat out of rhythm. I had it
right?
tested. I had to wear a what's it called? A Holter monitor for
Uh-huh.
24 hours that just monitors your heart rate. And I would
Yeah.
mark down like when I had these weird episodes, and they're like, oh yeah, your heart just misses a beat every now and again. Like it would, the classic like little uppy downy line that's going
Yeah.
showing your
Yeah.
heartbeat. Well, every now and again it would go up and then it would just hit absolute rock bottom for just like a split second, and then it would just go back to what it was doing. So I'd have these weird bits where I was like, oh, that felt strange. And it was like my heart
Yeah.
stopped. But it seems that that has now stopped
Do you know,
since I've had a booster.
weirdly enough, I have experienced weird heartbeats like very rarely, but
Mm.
just thinking about it now, have not experienced any since I got the COVID vaccinations.
I
I
mean, it's weird.
I've had this bloody tendonitis for God knows how long now, coming up on a year or maybe year and a half or something like that. And every now and then a tiny bit of my brain, the little conspiracy theorist part of my brain goes, you never had this pain before you got the vaccinations, did you, Cobb? And like I'm sure it's, you know, complete coincidence, but just there's that little part of my brain that's like, I wonder if it's related.
Yeah, like obviously I should say in no way am I saying that medical science, this, I have no idea. This
Yeah,
could be purely circumstantial, but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
just something I noticed after getting my booster is that, yeah, the thing that my heart normally would do seems to have
Fascinating.
stopped.
Yeah. It's like
Yeah.
Viagra initially, I believe, was a heart medication, and then they realized
Yeah.
like, oh, this also does a lot of other things. Um,
Yeah.
like I remember Rick Flair was talking about in a podcast. He asked him, the host asked him how he's doing, and he's like, "I'm great, man. Have you seen my wife?" And then they kind of have a bit of a laugh, and then he goes, "I got two Cialis as a part of my heart medication." And you're like, oh, "Okay, yeah, that's." I'm sure he's happy for a lot of other reasons then. So we got a couple of minutes left. Post-pandemic habits. Like I've noticed that I wash my hands so much. Like it's not like I wasn't washing my hands before, but doing things like getting back from the supermarket or basically anytime I enter the house from being outside, I'll wash my hands. And then also, I haven't been legit sick. I think I got COVID, I suspect once, and then I definitely had it once. And then I've had other times that at the time I thought I was getting sick, but thinking about it now, it was either allergies or a stress response, not release, sorry. Um, so I think the whole hand washing thing really does make a massive difference because the amount of times we must touch things when we're out and about, and then you rub your eye or you rub your lip or something. And yeah, I haven't hardly been sick this whole sort of pandemic, a couple of times, and that's about it. And I was a really sickly, like I used to get sick a couple of times a year,
Yeah.
beforehand. Yeah.
I think I've definitely, the hand washing is definitely one that has stayed on. I still, yeah, as you say, coming back from the supermarket or being out, you wash your hands.
Hmm.
Um, I do also wonder if we're not getting sick as much because people are just more acutely aware of being
Yeah.
unwell.
Yeah.
Like we used to see those ads for Coldrex or Coldril, all those ones like soldier on, take this when you're sick and just get out there and keep being productive members of society
Yeah.
with your sickness and give it to other people.
There'd be
And
this
it's
one's
like,
two people at the bus stop, and she'd be like, "I'm sorry, I've just got this horrible cold," and he's like, "Me too," and he's like, "Fine."
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that was the thing about those pills. It's like they're not making you not contagious, not sick. You're just like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm just masking it with painkillers and
Yeah.
whatever else. So it's like, I'm fine. And so maybe I think actually during the pandemic they did stop those ads. They had to retract a lot of those because I
Yeah.
think they didn't want to be like, oh yeah, just take these and keep going.
Yeah. You
Um,
can't.
but yeah, I think people are also just more conscious of the fact that if they're unwell, it could be COVID, or they don't want to give it to other people and stuff. So maybe
Yeah.
that's also why. But yeah, I certainly haven't been um since like I had COVID 2 days before Christmas last year. Um, that was about it. And yeah, I haven't really been sick before or since, really. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
lockdown was pretty good for that because I mean we were all wearing masks and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's great. All right, well, we're coming up on the end of our time on this free Zoom session, so I appreciate you. We basically got through all of the questions except for maybe what's next, but life goes on, doesn't it? Appreciate you spending your afternoon chatting to me about COVID, Hamish. Anything you want to
Not a
leave the
problem.
listeners on?
Uh, get vaccinated, be responsible, what's best for society. Don't be an arrogant shithead who thinks, it's fine, it's only 1% of the population that'll die, because that could be you or one of your family members.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you very much, Hamish.
Thank you, Taylor.
See you next time. Thanks again for listening to Ruddle Me This. I hope you enjoyed that kind of stroll down memory lane. Hope it wasn't too boring or traumatic. That one might have been a little more for me than for you, but I hope you enjoyed it all the same. Something new I'm going to be trying out with the podcast now is I'm going to end all of our episodes by playing a track from a Christchurch or possibly New Zealand-based musician. I made a post in a Christchurch musicians group many, many weeks ago now, and I had some people flick me over some music that they're happy for me to play in the end of the episode. So the first track we're going to be playing today is from I believe, singer-songwriter called Isla. That's Isla. She sent me a song called Better. I had a little bit of a listen before, and it is very good. Very, very talented person there. So if you enjoy the song and you'd like to hear more of Isla's music, you can find her page on Instagram at Isla_music. That's ISLA once again. And on Facebook, Isla Music. If you're listening to the podcast, Isla, thank you so much for submitting your song. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you all the best in the future with your musical journey. So with that, we'll see you next time, and here's Isla's song.
Baby girl insecure, I'm not sure what for. He barely mattered then, and he doesn't matter now. You deserve someone else who doesn't hate your friends. You're spending each night in fear, falling asleep in your chair. Oh, you could do better than that. Oh, you could do better than that. You grew underneath his thumb, his only daisies can. He kept you all to himself, and you thought that was love. And then from the shadows walked another man. And he knew that
That's all for Ruddle Me This for another week. I will see you next time.